231. That's the average number of apps used by many companies. This leads to a lot of context and tab switching that drains employee focus and costs your company. Grammarly can help. Grammarly's AI works in over 500,000 apps and websites, making it easy for your team to write clearly and on brand without disrupting workflow. Join 70,000 teams who save an average of $5,000 per employee per year using Grammarly. Go to grammarly.com/enterprise to learn more.
I'm Nathalie Lasselin, and I'm an underwater filmmaker.
Hello, I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Art, the podcast where we get up close and personal as we get to know women from around the world of visual arts. This is Season 2, Episode 46. My guest this week is the French underwater filmmaker Nathalie Lasselin. Nathalie has produced and directed 12 critically acclaimed underwater documentaries that have received numerous awards at international festivals and been distributed globally. She has also contributed to more than 200 feature films, documentaries and productions as a director of photography, underwater cameraman and dive master. She is known for her 2013 Sustainability at Sea, the 2015 TV miniseries Ascension, and the 2021 Secret of the Whales. Nathalie is also in demand as a speaker and expedition leader. She says, "The more I travel around the world, the more I realise the multitude of small actions we can take to change the health of our immediate environment." Nathalie was born in the north of France in 1970. Her natural curiosity for the planet and the environment has guided her since childhood to become an explorer and to produce images that have an impact on educating and informing a wider public. Nathalie graduated from the University of Montreal in 1992 in movie studies, by which time she had already decided that she wanted to leave her native France and settle in Canada. Nathalie's mission is to push the limits, to go deep within yourself and share the riches and fragilities of our Earth through 360-degree exploration. Nathalie has been inducted into the Women Diver Hall of Fame and the Explorers Club. She lives in Montreal with her partner. Nathalie, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for taking time to do this.
Oh, well, thanks a lot for the invitation, Chris.
Well, you know, we've had a few cinematographers here on the show already, of seasons 1 and seasons 2. But I think you're the first underwater cinematographer. You are the filmmaker that goes as deep as possible, right? The deeper the better, the colder the better for you. You're in your element.
Yeah, I think it's not really in a quest for the depth or the length, but it's a quest to go and see things that I cannot see anywhere else. You know, if Google is not able to go somewhere, I will try to go there and to bring back some images and stories.
Yeah, you certainly do. And you're obviously not afraid of the depth or the cold. Because I'm wondering what came first, though, for you, Nathalie, when you started this journey of exploration. Was it your interest in diving and, diving deep in oceans, or was it actually filmmaking? Which came first?
Filmmaking came first. I even went to university to study movie studies. And then I started underwater, scuba diving later in my life. But the minute I put my head underneath the surface, it's basically changed my life. And the moment I felt comfortable, I said, I have to take a camera with me, because I felt really privileged to be able to go in those places. And I was aware that many, many people will never have the chance to go there.
What was so magical about it for you then, that it appealed so intensely and it became your life?
My source of inspiration is Jules Verne. Jules Verne wrote so many books, and what I really enjoy about those books, and I wasn't aware when I was a kid, is that it's the perfect mix between science and fantasy and adventure. So I think it's every time I was looking, beyond the surface, or just, when you open a door, but you don't know what's going to be. And on the other side of that door, it's a world of possibilities. And I think the underwater world that represents 70% of the planet is exactly that. At some point, we were saying that we know more about the surface of the moon than in the depths of the ocean. And I do believe it's still true. So for me, it was just like, let's go and try to figure out what we can see out there.
Because when you imagine people being expeditionists the way that you are, Nathalie, you imagine that you have to be brave. You have to be maybe not totally fearless, but I have a cautiousness about it as well. But tremendous bravery. Was that the little girl as well? Were you always brave?
I think it's bravery, but it's a lot of curiosity. And I believe my curiosity, since I can remember, always drive me. It's what pushes me to go things. And even if I'm scared, I'm like, yes, but I have to go there. I have to verify. I have to go and see. And at the same time, I think there's always something else in the back of my mind is, one day I will not be able to do all the stuff. And one day maybe I'm going to ask myself, well, do you remember you had some dream? Did you ever try? And if I say, no, I didn't even try, I'm not sure I will be able to live with me at that point. So for me, even if sometimes I'm scared, I have a lot of doubt. I'm not even sure I will be able to do it or to bring back those images. It's like, at least I'm gonna try.
So let's go back a little bit to where all this came from, because you were born in France in 1970. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and what was interesting you then. What were the adventures you were doing as a little girl?
Well, when I was a little girl in the north of France, so near Belgium, I remember when we lived, there was a small village. And of course, during the Second World War, the north of France has been invaded. So there was some bunker, made out of concrete. And I could remember one of those bunker, and I was always curious to go inside, but it was kind of forbidden. So, I never went actually inside that bunker, but each time I was driving my bicycle and I was going in front of it, I was wondering, what could I see from inside, and what was the story it could tell, what was the people who went there, what was the entire story. So I think it opens in my mind a mix of history, a mix of archaeology, a mix of the stories that happen and the one we can tell and share, and a sense of patrimony as well. So
you were mostly out then just looking for historical interest then? Was that something that appealed to you as well? The environment and, how we got to where we are. I mean, being raised in the north of France, as you say, near the Belgian border, there's a lot of World War II history there. So was history something that you were interested in school?
Yeah, I was really interested not only in history, I think, because in Europe, history is at every corner of the streets. So you see that on a daily basis. So you cannot avoid it because there's always the statue about the past war or the one before or older histories. So it's something that is part of, I believe, your value to recognize what happened in the past. And because we have so many countries close to each other. You do 50 kilometers and people are different. They don't quite eat exactly the same thing. Their way of speaking are not quite the same way. So there's that rich, it's really rich around you and you don't have to go that far. So history played a big part in my life, but I'm not quite sure when I was young that I was fully aware of that. I think when I was young, I was more like, let's go somewhere and just to try to see. I was more like the adventurous, little girl climbing on top of the trees and being close to nature and to the trees, going on my bicycle and going on in the small roads and just to see, I never took that road. What can it be like? So I think it was really curiosity and history was there. But when you are young, you don't really think of that. It's more unconscious or subconscious.
Now, what about a camera, though? Did you have a camera when you were a child and go exploring with that?
Oh, no, back then, no, we didn't have cameras. A still camera, the first one I got, I believe I was maybe 13 or 14 years old, and it was, those Polaroid. So you had only like 10 shots you could take, which is something I really cherish. And later in my life, when I went to university and studied in movies, it was really interesting because it was on film, and it changes the way we were doing things. Because before you hit that rec button, you had to think about it. Are you sure that's the picture you want to take? And I believe the fact that I was born at that period of time changed my way of seeing things, because every single image needed to be thought really carefully before being taken.
And how did you learn your photography? Who did you learn that from?
Well, photography, I never went to school really to learn photography. My sister, she learned photography, but after studies, she did something else in her life. She had a black and white laboratory. So, I look at her a little bit, but at that moment I was more into painting. So I was doing a little bit of oil painting and acrylics. But even if I was good with the colors, I think I wasn't that great with drawing per se. So it's like, not having a good foundation. So you can put a lot of, colors and all, but the foundation of drawing was not quite there. So, but I was really interested, about how to make, something alive and how we can transmit an energy through an image. So I did a lot of painting. And then when I decided, well, okay, what I'm going to do with my life, it wasn't clear what I wanted to do. But at some point it was more about, filmmaking, telling stories. At first I thought, well, I'm going to go, around feature film, telling, stories that you invent. And I took just like a weekend training on video, and it was, a long process, kind of a bit awkward as when we think of the technology we have now, but it just opens up the possibilities. And I remember the first film I did, in fact, was a documentary short film about what we call les courets, which is basically like you have a couple of small houses together, and in the middle of those houses, you have kind of a backyard where the toilet was. So it was really, in a poor area, with people who were touching me a lot because of the way they had to live with basically not a lot of things. And I was really touched by that, like just, as we can see, maybe just the regular people, struggling to make a decent way of living, and at the same time being able to be happy just with the basic stuff. So I think in that time, it's how, I came from, well, I'm going to invent stories and work with actors to, well, no, finally, I think documentaries is something closer to me.
You mentioned Jules Verne as being an inspiration. How about Jacques Cousteau? I can imagine that he was also a source of inspiration too.
It's funny because, in fact, and I always admit it, well, not really. When I was young, I wasn't fully aware of what he was doing. We didn't watch television that often. It was not part of our life. And for me, Cousteau, despite everything he did, was not an inspiration. I don't know why, maybe because I didn't know him well enough, but he never played, and it's really funny for what I'm doing now, but he never played a role in my journey.
Were there any women that did?
Well, we didn't have a lot of figure that we could know back then, but for me there was Marguerite Yourcenar. So there were a couple of writers indeed that were a source of inspiration. So it was more about the writers, because for visual art per se, we weren't really in contact, with all those artists.
What were you reading at that time then as a child? I'm thinking before college, Nathalie, when literature and films and so on, they inform us a lot and, instill in us certain ideas and notions as we develop our own, career path and certainly start to think about our career path. So what were you reading? What were you watching?
So I was reading, all the classical theater writer that we, like Molière, those kind of character, and I really enjoy poetry and theater. That was my, most of the books I was reading. I think both of them had something that was really appealing to me. The fact that in theater, there are less description and more action, because it's the dialogue that is really important. And in poetry, it's something short. And I think that influence a lot what I'm doing, because every time I'm doing a film or a sequence, for me the rhythm is really important. It has to go to the point, to make feel the atmosphere right away. So I think it's really sculpt the way I film or I write in my career now.
Did you write poetry? Do you now?
Oh yes, I did. Yeah, as a teenager, I did. Yeah, and I was writing a journal of everything can happen, or you see, or you get inspired, or the movie you saw, and I was writing poetry. Yes, yeah.
And the writing, then, of course, that's part of what you've done as an adult. What type of writing do you most prefer? Is it the nonfiction, the documentary style?
It's funny because I prefer the documentary style. However, I feel that sometimes we are stuck in that style, in the sense that in life some things could have happened, but they didn't. But if they did, the story would have been better or more interesting. So So I really enjoy the documentary style, but inside the documentary style, I always let my mind go in kind of a parenthèse, just go in something more poetic.
Now, what films were you watching? What was your movie interest then when you were a teenager?
As a teenager, there was all kind of film. Some of them were really mainstream because it was what we had access to. Because back then, internet didn't exist, so it was what you could access in a small town theater. But at the same time, there were other films, and I remember some of the films that was around World War II and the Holocaust. There was one with Romy Schneider called Le Vieux Fusil, the old gun. And it's funny because I can remember some of the images of that film. It was really a hard movie to watch. It's like another one, which is called Nacht und Nebel, that was around the Holocaust and what happened. And those two films, I think they make me keep in mind how fragile and our humanity. So I think those two films just always in the background brought me back to the documentary and the people and the community. So those two played a big role.
And who would have been the cinematographers you were paying attention to?
Pedro Almodovar was one of the one that I really appreciate, just because it was so colorful, because the characters they had something different, something so strong. So he was one of my favorite one ever. Yeah.
And probably still is.
Oh yeah.
His work continues. Yeah, it really is noteworthy, of course. And I'm wondering, though, in terms of the style, that when you were in high school, and you mentioned there that your first film was a short documentary. Was that when you were still in school, and was that when you were starting to put together in your mind how to produce, how to be a cinematographer, how to be a filmmaker?
No, back then I was still at school, so I was just trying to understand, how to tell a story, and what makes a good story, and then you realize that any subject can make a good story. It just depends of how you're gonna bring it, how you're gonna raise the attention, what is gonna bring on the table, what's new about it, and how you're going to be attached to the characters. And back then, at first, you don't realize that there are so many layers in filmmaking. Because when you look at a film, it seems to be not complicated, straightforward. But I remember when I went at school, I did my first school in Paris, and one of the film, we had to watch it and to rewrite the entire script and storyboard.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
very impressive. How did that go?
It was so amazing, because then you realize the length of the shot, the wide angle, the close up, the angle of the camera. But it took forever. I think it took me like 2 weeks back then. And it was like, time consuming. It was insane. But then after that exercise, you realize the importance of every single decision. But it's something anyone who wants to make a film should do. Just pick up the best film, your preferred film, whatever it is, and do that exercise. And then you understand how the film is built.
And, there's going to be budding cinematographers listening, filmmakers listening, maybe young people in film school, and they'll probably want to know what camera you were using back in the very early days, Nathalie.
The first one was a video camera that we borrowed, but when I went at the university, it was a film camera, 16 millimeters and AART. So there was two brands, AART that does not exist anymore, which was a French camera, and then it was Arriflex that still exists. So it was the two, and at some point I was able to buy a Bolex. So the Bolex, you had those small cartridge that you put in, and it was a 16 millimeters. So, and what was really amazing is that, we were talking to people in the production and try to have the rest of the rolls that they didn't use and to have them to do our film. And sometimes we had just like a minute and a half of roll available just to do something. And then we were doing the shot, and we were, doing everything we could to be able to pay for the laboratory to develop the film.
Yes. Which format did you prefer back then?
16 millimeters was amazing. Of course, we were all dreaming of 35 millimeters, but it was too expensive for us. It was, impossible to buy, and more specifically to be able to develop. And then for the editing, because we were doing the editing on a Steinbeck table. So the Steinbeck basically, when you think about it, it's just, it's crazy because we had to go to the laboratory and have the negative and the positive of the film. And the positive of the film, we had to thread it through the roll and cut it really with a splicer, and we were really, really careful never to lose one frame. And how many times that happened that we lost one frame somewhere in the bin, in that big tissue, at the bottom, and we're like, where is that frame? And that rings a bell, right?
Yes, exactly. It is. And it's part of the learning process too, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, and I can remember the number of nights that we didn't sleep and just trying to make the most out of it, and everything was taking so much time.
So was this once you moved to Montreal then and started studying at the University of Montreal? When you started in, I think, 1990, you began there. So was that when this was really becoming real for you, or did you have experience before when you were still in France?
I did 1 year in Paris, during which I worked and studied in movies, and we did 2 short films, in a group. And then I went to University of Montreal, and it's where everything became more realistic, to be able one day to work in the movie business. And I mean, back then, the chance to be able to work in the movie business was not that easy, because we didn't, there was a couple of television station, and I didn't want to work for television. It was clear in my mind that I wanted to work in the film industry, not the video industry. But that dream didn't last long, because in 97, even at the National Film Board of Canada, the first video camera arrives. And then it was the beginning of the numeric revolution, the digital revolution. But in the 90s, 91, 92, it was, being in a group with new friends, and everyone was helping the other doing their project, their film. So we were doing like 8-minute, 12 minutes films, and helping doing anything we could.
Now, I can understand the appeal of Montreal, but there may be listeners like me, Nathalie, who have a passion for French cinema. It is overall my favorite film world is French cinema. So why would, as a French girl who wanted to get into the industry, why would you walk away from that opportunity? Or was it more competitive to get into it in France than it became if you moved to Montreal?
Well, it's funny. In fact, it has nothing to do with the career I wanted to have. When I was a young girl, by coincidence, I met someone, and his way of talking was a little bit weird. And I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Well, from Quebec." And I said, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And he was really older than me, but he was used to work with kids. And I said, "Oh, well, give me your address, and I will write to you and ask you about your country," because I was curious. And when I was 15, it was the first time I came to Canada, and I said, "Well, when I'm gonna be an adult, it's where I'm gonna live." It was as easy as that. Sometimes when you're a kid, you have a dream, you don't know why, and you just follow it. And when I arrived in Montreal, I was, it's going to be here. And I didn't know I was going to stay that long, but it's where I still live now. But I'm lucky enough to be able to travel everywhere and in many, many places in the world. So now I can recognize how rich Europe and all the possibilities there is in Europe that are completely different to Canada. But I think at the same time, the landscape, the openness of Canada was quite different.
Now, I can imagine at such a young age of 15, making that journey. What was your parents' reaction to that?
Well, my parents, what they said is like, well, you're going to finish your degree just before university. And once you have it, then you do what you want to do with your life, but you have to do that. So it took me another 4 years before I was able to leave France. And then I moved to Canada. But they say, no, you need to at least have a French degree just in case, anything happened. But, and they weren't really too keen to let me see going into the movie industry because, at that time, it wasn't really a career. I mean, you could be an attorney, you could be so many things, but filmmaker, really? Are you going to be able to make a living out of it? Nah, not sure.
Well, it's a brave move. I know there's more of a structure these days. There's more women coming into the industry. But back then, in the early 90s, it was a bold move for you. But you clearly were determined. That was the journey for you. And I know in the early 90s, you were becoming first assistant camera for a second unit, focus puller. You were getting the work. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's exactly. My first job I had, in fact, was as a projectionist. So I was working in one of the laboratory booths at the National Film Board, and it was amazing because back then the National Film Board was so well known for all the amazing documentary filmmakers. So every single day I could see the work of the others. So I did that for maybe 3 or 4 months. And then I went to the camera department. And as you said, I started as second camera assistant and then first camera assistant. And slowly, I could pretend to be the camera operator and then, a director of photography. But it was, you had to prove that you were able to do it. I think maybe because of the cost of the production back then, I'm not quite sure. And I think it was a time where all those positions were mainly reserved to male, and there weren't that many opportunities. So it was a mix of working as a camera assistant and being a camera person or a director of photography or on independent movies. And then you could pretend to do it on, more important budget, more important films. So
when do you think was your turning point then in obviously climbing the ladder is one thing, and it's a path we all have to take in our careers. But at what point on that ladder did you finally realize, okay, I've made the right decision, this is where I belong, and feel confident then about getting the work that you wanted to, not just work that was coming to you, but work that you wanted to do to make a difference that fit your values and your interest in exploration, and putting all of those things together, Nathalie?
There was, I believe, several steps. One of the steps when I was able to work on as a camera assistant for documentaries with women concerned, that was for me really exceptional. And I remember working on documentaries when you have the feeling or the belief that it may change something in a society. It may give hope. And being able to work on those productions for me was really important. And I remember in I believe 97 was the year when I did my last production as a camera assistant, because at that time I was moving to become a camera person and DP. And I said to the person I was working with, no matter what I'm going to do on those films, they reach my values in a deep manner that I don't mind being a camera assistant on those. And I work on a couple of films. One was about the situation of women in the world, and another one about the cut, the clear cut we're doing in the woods in Quebec. And those two films up to now are really, really important. So, it took maybe 5 years until I said, well, there's no going back. I'm at the right place and doing the right things.
Talk about the 2008 production. You were an underwater cinematographer in Everything is Fine. Tell us about that, because that must have been, one for your milestone of productions.
When I became underwater, you mean?
The production Everything is Fine that you completed in 2008. Working on those on those films underwater for me was another step. And the minute I started to work on underwater films, it changes my way of telling stories and how I could see filming as a part of inspiring people and letting them know about what is going on in the world or in the environment or in nature or within communities. And in 2014, you did a TV miniseries called Ascension, when again you were underwater cameraman there. Tell us about that and, how that really informed you and shaped you and what you were taking out of these productions now that we're going to help you with the bigger ones.
That's a completely different kind of filming. And I love doing underwater cinema work on features, on series. And for me, it's two different crafts. Working on documentaries is one thing, but working on feature film or commercial, it's just amazing because you can have the tools you need and you want to be able to do the most beautiful or appealing image. So it's having all the tools, the team from the lighting people, the gaffers, everyone, the assistant, and all the top of the line equipment in order to have the perfect image. And at the same time, the huge difference between feature film or those series and documentaries is that you've got such big teams. I mean, on documentary nowadays, we are 4 or 5 people, but on a feature film on a set, maybe you are like 65, 70 people. Yeah. And what is funny when you're doing underwater camera work, it's always the same story. The production calls you, you go, you do the scouting, you tell them what you need, what's going to take to make the shot. And they're going to say, okay, so we're going to start the day and you're going to be the first shot we're going to do that day. It's always like that, nearly. And then you arrive on the set and said, well, finally, we're going to do that shot first, and then it's going to be you. And as the time passed by, it's never your turn. And then you can see the clock ticking and you're like, okay, it's going to happen again. We're going to be the last shot to be done at the end of the day. But in fact, it's the most complicated one most of the time, but it's the one that I don't know why, they always put at the end. So you always finish your day with, because of the union and everything and the regulation, you've got a short period of time to do it the most perfectly way you can in a short period of time. So you've got a build-up of adrenaline to make it happen, and you're cut to of the rest of the team, because all the team is at the surface, with all the monitors, and you've got communication with them because you're underwater, and you've got communication. So you just hear them and their comments and their feedback when they push the communication button to talk to you. So you're kind of disconnected to them, and you're trying to understand what the director wants to do, what the topside DP is doing with the lighting, how you're supposed to place the camera for that. So it's a mix of understanding the techniques, understanding what the director wants to do with that shot, and be as precise and efficient as you can in those conditions.
And on the other hand, in documentary, one of the documentary films you're most known for, I think, is Sustainability at Sea, which you did in 2013. Now, that was your production. You wrote that and you directed that. Was this the direction that you found you were really wanting to go then? This was preferable over, the film world. This was your own documentary, and this was the route you wanted to take, telling the stories that meant the most to you.
Yeah, I think there was 2 things for me. Even if I love feature film and all the, the techniques, having the best cameras, you can dream of,
the best budget.
And the best budget, and you can say, I want that specific lens, and you have that luxury, which I really enjoy, because some of the things you cannot do them if you don't have those pieces of equipment and the big team. But on the other hand, if I was doing that exclusively, for me, there was something missing in my life, because for me, a camera is a tool to tell stories and to raise awareness. And when I did Sustainability at Sea, was, I believe, my 4th documentary that I produced, was when I realized, okay, this is what we can do, what we can share, and that film can be used as an example for others to do something similar in their area, in their community. And then the other thing, being a camera person is something weird, because in a way you're always disconnected with the person in front of the camera, because you've got the person who is telling his or her story. And then you've got that piece of glass, that lens, that camera, and you are behind it. So there's always kind of a big glass in between. And sometimes you want to cross it, to make connection. And even with documentary, it's not always an easy way. There's not always an easy way of doing it.
Now, you look at your career, Nathalie, you've filmed, explored in oceans and deep wrecks and I think traveled to more than 50 countries, including the Arctic. Which of those adventures stand out most for you right now at this point in your career?
I believe it's one of my latest projects that I am working on, and it's not over, it's not completed. We started it in 2021. It's a documentation. I will not call it a documentary because it's the visual and the filming is edited to be used more during lectures than being used to be projected or screened somewhere, in a sense that using visual for presentation where you are the presenter gives you the opportunity to make sure that people can really receive what you're doing. So the story is the following. It's the fourth biggest crater in the world. It's called the Eye of Quebec because the astronaut, when from the ISIS station, take pictures of that place. And it has been discovered as one of the biggest craters in the world when in the 60s, they needed to make a big hydroelectric reservoir and they flooded the place. And now it's a huge, huge one. So, back then, everybody is so happy and proud of all the engineering. It's one of the biggest dam. It's amazing. But the thing is that it was the land of the First Nation. And nobody asked them, the permission. So there was kind of a really dark and sad story in that place. So I wanted to put together the expedition because nobody dove in that place nor filmed it underwater, just to try to understand, okay, what is that submerged forest is becoming? What does that tell us as resilience, and how I can make a connection with the First Nation there, the Innu people. And for me, it was really taking the camera, the tool of taking back images to build a bridge between the past and now, two different kind of realities, and also to make a form of reconciliation. And I think to be able to do all that based on exploration and filming, because if you don't have images, you don't have proof, was and is one of the most interesting project for me. And telling that story, because I give presentation in many countries about what happened in that place. And it's resonate a lot in many, many countries because they have some similarities with something they went through as well.
You mentioned the lectures there. I wanted to ask you about that, Nathalie, because you spend a lot of time traveling and giving lectures and TED Talks and that kind of thing. What are your main focuses these days then? Or do you call on all the archive material that you have, like the production you said you started in 2021? You have a lot of footage that you can compile for these. So is everyone unique, or do you base these on current productions as well?
The lectures, they are always unique. I mean, there are some sequences that are used in different lectures. But the story, it's like if you were writing a film, but the editing will never be over. It will, because each year there's another part of the story that is added, or another way of seeing at what you did in the past. So now it's always a mix of every year I've got a call of a filming expedition, because all the expedition are filmed. For me, going on the water without a camera is is nonsense. I don't even understand why I would do it, unless maybe to do some cleanups. But if I don't have a camera, I will not go to a place. I always say I'm a really bad tourist. I'm not a tourist. I don't like it anyway. But I need to have a camera, because for me, it's like, okay, if I go somewhere, is to be able to bring back something to be shared. So now all the lectures are really unique, and each time is like in next year, I'm thinking already of the expedition I want to put together, because I know there's something to be filmed, to be documented that we don't know, or something that has changed, and I want to film the evolution of a specific area or a specific situation. So it's like an ongoing production that will, evolve. The result, the editing will evolve each year.
And do you have some productions in mind then, Nathalie, expeditions in mind that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, there are some caves expedition that we're going to continue doing in Europe, in some places that has not been documented. The north of Quebec, like the James Bay. There are so many things we don't know about the biodiversity. This is another one of our projects. We've got another projects around shipwrecks in the Great Lakes. So there are a lot of them. I think I'm going to miss time, to be able to do all of them. So there are different projects, and all together they make a lot of sense in the fact that it always goes to know where we come from, to better understand where we are going and how we can evolve in a better way, in a more collaborative way.
Well, speaking to that, I know back in 2018, you began an expedition. It was a unique dive in the St. Lawrence River. You spent, 30 hours immersed in the river from the west tip of Montreal to the east tip. Tell me what you got from that. What was the purpose of that?
There was two purposes. The first one was driven by my curiosity, because really I was like, it's funny. I travel the world, I go everywhere, and I don't quite even know where the river right beside the city. So I said, well, that's funny, to go that far away and you don't even know what is just around the corner. So I wanted to be like a drop of water and to take that journey from one end of the island to the other end, because on top of being curious, the St. Lawrence River is our source of drinking water. And I was, people don't know it. I mean, they don't realize that it's not just a seaway. That's really the source of our water for 50% of the population of the entire Quebec, for 90% of the population of the city, and all our wastewaters are going back there. So I said, I wanted to raise awareness towards the fact that we need to take care of fresh water and drinking water. So I did that dive. We did some work with university researchers regarding emerging contaminants. And we did a documentary for the Quebec television, Télé-Québec, in order to tell the story about that big adventure, the motivation why I wanted to do it, but also to go and meet scientists who can tell us about, okay, so should we be worried? What is the situation of the St. Lawrence River? What is the situation of the consumption of water we have? So it was, for me, the best example of the project I'm doing now. And it was really a pivot moment in my life, because I can now, for every single project, do something about filming the beauty of the environment or what is going on somewhere, working with scientists, all kind of researchers, and then doing an expedition. So it's like, an adventure, and just, make people aware or inspire them to do something in their life. Just, don't just be an audience. Don't just be someone who's watching, but be yourself an actor of the change or an actor of your life, to be more active than passive.
Well, you've certainly done that. I believe you've contributed to more than 200 feature films and documentaries and productions overall. And you've won many awards too, numerous awards internationally at festivals. Nathalie, what did they mean to you? What kind of recognition do you need? Is it the awards, or is it your own satisfaction when you finish a production? You can look at it and say, okay, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve now. But then sometimes the awards come and that gives you more validation. Which is most important?
It's always fun. It's always a kind of a recomfort to have an award, because your peers are saying, well, you did a good job. So it's really nice. But I think, honestly, the best gift is when you do a screening of your film and someone comes to you, or someone even a year after send you an email or a messenger, whatever, and tells you, I just wanted to let you know that your film changed something in my life. For me, this is the best salary. I mean, it's always great to have an award and all, and some recognition. I'm in the Women Divers Hall of Fame, in the Explorers Club, and I'm really, really proud of that. And at the same time, the best reward is really the person who reach out to you and say, thank you for what you did. I've been touched. I've been inspired. You give me hope. For me, this is the best one. Yeah.
Well, if you are not a good tourist, what do you do for relaxation, Nathalie?
Hiking. I love hiking. I put my home on my back, which is my backpack, and with my partner, we go and hike for 10 days, 12 days, on complete autonomy. And I love it because it just pushed me to my limits. It expands my comfort zone, and you just have 3 things to do. Just walk as you can, eat and find water, and find a place to sleep. So it just brings you back to the basics, to the basis of life. And I think for me, it's really important, because in those moments, I'm just a human. I just have to fulfill those basic needs that will make me alive. Food, purpose by walking, and sleeping.
Survival.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I think, yeah, it's survival. But I mean, if you think of it, if we have a shelter, if we have food and water, if we have a purpose in life, what else do we need? Really, we can live on that. We can survive on that. So I think it just brings us to the most essential things in life. It's like riding your bicycle is the same thing. You just enjoy the journey. Sometimes it's a poor day, raining, windy, you're cold, you're too hot, it hurts everywhere. But when it hurts, you're alive. And I think it's something that is really important for me, just to feel that I'm alive, no matter if it's pain or something good that I will feel, I'm alive.
What are some of the biggest hikes that you've done?
I did the Tower Rim Trail last year, which was the year where they had the most amount of snow. So it was a tricky one. We did the Sunshine Coast Trail in BC. So that kind of trails in Quebec as well, and in different places. And each time it's a different journey. Yeah.
So what do you watch then if you want to sit back and watch a film at the end of the day? What are you watching now for fun? Tell me it's a French film. Please tell me it's French cinema, Nathalie.
I don't have a specific name of one film I could think of right now, but I will not tell you it's a Canadian one. There's all kind of I don't know. I mean, I watch a lot of the Bristol documentary production, of course, because, you know, they are all the high-end documentary production. So I watch a lot of them. And then I'm looking more and more of everything that is around 360, you know, installation, because it just opens up a new way of, you know, opening access to places or to some environment. And I don't say environment as, you know, geography, but more of a, you know, a fantasy place. So I really enjoy the virtual reality stuff and 360. I watch, you know, some of them just to see, okay, where can we go with that new tool? You know, because it just opens up new way to tell stories.
And you probably watch the work of Becky Kagan-Schott, do you? Becky is someone we want on the show. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I know her personally, of course. We have a chance to see each other in diving shows, and she's doing amazing work. I think we have a lot in common in what we're doing. You know, we're doing it in a little bit different way, but she's amazing. Oh, yeah.
Well, finally, tell me a little bit more about the non-profit organization that you're operating, Nathalie, Aqua Subterra. Tell us what that's about.
Well, it's a non-profit organization we put together in 2011, I believe, yeah. And so mostly we did it because we wanted to go to some places, explore, work with the scientists, work with the community. And for the past 7 years now, we're doing a lot of work in cleaning the rivers. So mostly in the St. Lawrence River, because it's where I live and where the group we are living. And it's making our part to do something for the planet. And as I always say, I'm not going to save the planet, because the planet's going to take care of itself better than what we can do. And anyway, how can we save it? But I want to improve our living environment, basically, and just to make our part. And what I realized with the nonprofit organization, we have a lot of volunteers coming and helping us, and volunteering, doing things together is a great way to build relation with the others and with the community. So now we have a nice group of people just, you know, helping each other. Each time we put together a new event, new cleanups, we have people just, you know, raise their hand and say, well, I can come and give a hand for one day. And at the end of it, they spend like 4 days with us. So it's something that is giving back a lot to the community. And lately we did 2 weeks of underwater cleanup because there was 1,000 of tires underwater. And we just decided to do our part. And it's amazing because, you know, it takes people closer to each other, and it's making barriers fall down, because suddenly you realize that, oh, you know, the city is helping, there's a big industry who is helping, and people from different backgrounds that are working together. And you're like, oh, you know, maybe I thought that those people were, you know, that kind of people, but no, it's not true. It's just a human like us. So I really enjoy putting together a big project like that are, you know, gathering people together to do something.
Well, you certainly are giving back, and you're making a big difference in this world, Nathalie. Congratulations on all your achievements so far, and keep up the good work.
Thanks a lot. It was amazing to talk to you today. And the movie industry, the film and the power of a camera, no matter what is the camera, is just immense. I mean, it makes us dream. It gives us hope. It entertains us. And I mean, I think if there's something I wouldn't want to lose is my eyes, because I mean, we can see so many amazing things on this planet. It's just exceptional.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time. I really appreciate it, Nathalie.
Thanks a lot.
And remember, you can scroll down the show notes that accompany this episode to get the link to Nathalie's website, to her IMDb profile, and to her social media. You can also find a link to our social media and also our email address. If you prefer to reach out to us via email, do drop us a line. We love to hear from you and any suggestions that you may have for guests too. And as we wrap up Season 2 and start to plan Season 3, which we will launch in 2025, I would really love to hear from you. If you have any feedback as to the format of the show, anything at all about the show that you think we could improve, do drop me a line either to our email address, hollowellstudios@gmail.com, or by sending us a DM on Instagram. Any suggestions you have, any feedback, if you're a regular listener to the format or to the lineup of guests that we have, we're always open to suggestions because we want to make this show better and better as we get into Season 3. But for now, my thanks again to my guest this week, Nathalie Lasselin, and to you for listening. I'll be back next week with another episode, so do join me then.